And we're back for Game Master Circle podcast. I'm Diggy.
I'm Voyeur,
And
the
I'm
unfortunately named.
sorry about
So, uh, today's topic that I will admit I forgot about, and then Voyeur uh, kindly reminded me. It's about our most memorable big bad evil guy, or BBEGs, or villains for those who are not initiated um, in all of our campaigns. Um, I have to admit, I have a few, but I'm probably only going to talk about two. But I am not going to be the one to start off this party. Which one of you two want to get this little shindig started today? Since I was the one who started last episode.
I suppose I could start this with one of mine.
Go for it.
All right. Well, the first one that I found particularly memorable. This goes back to the first campaign that I ran. The game, it was a one of White Wolf's old World of Darkness games, Demon the Fallen. The BBEG was a character from one of the player characters' pasts, actually, a former lover that, well, things had gone bad way in the past, and while the player character had eventually gotten a new perspective, the lover had instead gotten power. So there was a lot of personal hooks, particularly for that player. But what I was particularly happy with was that I was able to get a theme going of, for lack of a better word, there but for the grace of God go I, in that the player's character could have easily gone in the same direction as the BBEG if things had been a little bit different.
So wait, so it was you had a potential where the player characters almost ended up being the bad guys themselves.
Well, it's. I mean, it goes a lot into the character creation and backstory in that particular game line. But if they were player characters, obviously they had not gone in that BBEG direction. But the way the story, again, just the way the setting was for that game system, it allowed for that kind of thematic thing going on, which, you can't always pull that off with a story, with a campaign that you're running, but if you can, great.
I'm actually I've had a few of my characters as a player get turned into a big bad evil guy.
I don't want to get bogged down with the minutia of the setting to explain how everything worked, but if anyone listening to this is familiar with Demon the Fallen, you probably have a good idea.
Oh nope, not familiar with that one. I'm actually
Ah.
gonna
I'm
have
not
to look
particularly familiar with that setting either. Although White Wolf, Old World of Darkness, I have at least a little bit of understanding for.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Vampire the Masquerade, there's a lot of similar themes.
Okay, I dipped my toes into Vampire the Masquerade a little bit. Not a whole lot, but
Interesting. Okay.
I'll launch into mine next. If
Okay.
that's okay. In part because Voyeur will be able to speak to some of it. I don't use a lot of overarching BBB BBEs, to be perfectly honest. Not for like campaign size stuff. Campaign level stuff tend to bigger factions and bigger and like larger multi forces or multi people forces. But in this case, I'll just say the name out loud. Petulant Child.
I like this
Yes.
one already.
I
So
remember that one.
for the context, Petulant Child was effectively the supernatural boss of one of the PCs for long running Exalted game that I've been one of the co-storytellers for. And Child, it was time for that character for them to finally take down Child. Had been kind of in the background largely up to that point.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
go ahead.
probably worth noting Petulant Child was not this character's original name.
Yep.
This was a this was a punishment from their higher up.
Yup. Yep.
The
So
punishment was to be named Petulant Child.
they
Yes.
were pissed. Name matters for these beings. So yeah, no, that was a big deal. And so Petulant Child, oh, coming up, the big situations where the players were dealing with Child directly was in that final confrontation. Up until that point, it had been dealing with Child's like lieutenants and stuff like that. Seeing the effects Child had on their particular section of the underworld. But then they get to the actual fight itself. And Child looks weak at first. They're having an easy of it. But that was intentional. I had Child playing with them. Going into, to use the term, pissy boss mode at a certain point, and thoroughly starting to actually be a problem. And then at one point in that actual fight, Child goes into superpower mode and is about to make a TPK. This was scripted, of course, because the player whose character was there to kill Child needed to be the one to die final blow against. And it was beautiful. Now, I wasn't the one actually role-playing Child. That was Voyeur.
that that both it's not surprising and like, oh, it fits. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, there is definitely something to be said for having a podcast at some point about a podcast topic about co-GMing. But
Yeah,
this is not the day.
no, if anything, um, it's a learning experience.
Yeah, yeah. There are pros and cons to it, as there are pros and cons to everything.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, like you
It,
said, that's a topic for another time. But yeah,
yeah,
it's a learning experience, and it can go really well or really bad.
yeah. Incidentally, another villain that I figured I would mention was also from that campaign, and was also a case where I was role playing the villain for someone else that was running that particular story. But I believe it is now your
I know
turn,
who you're gonna be
Diggy.
talking
We'll
about.
get to that one later.
Oh, I know who you were about to talk
So
about. Okay.
if if I said I had two, so I'm gonna talk about my very first uh villain or big bad evil that I ever wrote for my very first campaign I've ever run. I had 4 players, and I introduced them. It was like 3 sessions in, and I was like, all right, I'm going to introduce them to the villain. The villain's name was Alihana. She was a human druid who was trying to raise a army of Ents and like different types of like plant monsters and mutants, like mutated bears with flora and stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like I wrote this whole thing with like fungal men and all this stuff. It was about 2 months of my time. They met her. She did the whole evil speech and disappeared. About 10 sessions in, I had her reappear. To do the whole gloating thing. Uh, as she was in the middle of her speech, one of my players decided to take out their bow and fire at her. He hit. He did some damage. I had her standing on top of a tree.
Uh-oh.
And I said, okay, I'm going to be fair and I'm going to roll to see if she stays on this tree. The thing about human druids, they don't have the best reflex save. Back then, they didn't have the best reflex save in the edition that I was playing. I think it was 3.5. I rolled a nat 1.
Oh boy.
When I described her appearing on the tree, I said the tree was about 60 feet up. If you know anything about D&D, anything past 10 feet, every 10 feet of fall damage is like 6d6 damage.
Uh-oh. Oh, that ain't. I know where this is going.
I critically failed and killed my big bad evil before they even had a chance. And I just rolled with it. I was so proud of my player for taking the shot during the evil speech, because you're like, why are they letting that? Why are they, like, in all the movies and stuff? You're like, why do they let the guy talk? Like, you have
Yeah.
a clear shot. Just take the shot. Nobody does it. My player took the shot, and there was a moment of silence at the table, mostly on my part. Everybody cheered him on, and I was just sitting at the end of the table, just with my hands in my head. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, this actually relates to another evil guy that I wasn't sure whether to bring up or not. But it was a very similar experience where, and I am sorry to interrupt as well, Diggy.
oh no, I was done. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. But again, with that Demon the Fallen game, the first BBEG, it's a modern setting. I think it's that that particular villain, um, in his mortal life, his day job was like the mayor's aide or something. The game took place in New York, so a bad guy with more influence than you want.
Gotcha.
And this was so long ago, I lost many of the details, but the players found about a meeting he was going to have and decided to rush in there, and I had this big fight planned out. They practically one-shotted him at the start of the fight, and that's when I learned, as this is advice for whatever it's worth, whatever BBEG you have, um, if need be, have an idea for a boss for them, someone that they answer to, so that if the players take them out,
Or never put them on top of a bloody tree.
Yeah.
where they
Yeah.
can get shot
So
off and take
so after
300
so
damage.
after that character was finished, I had to quickly scramble to to come up with, okay, well, who does he answer to? And that's who that's who the players have to stop now.
I I love when you're like when you look over a villain character and you're like, oh, I wonder if this character is going to be too strong. Is this going to be a TPK? And they don't last the first round of combat. And
I
it's like,
always go above and beyond to buff my BBEGs to make sure of that.
well, and that was my learning curve. What as a game master was, I was so worried about um killing the party that I would actually make my encounters super easy by accident. Now, I make my encounters if you go by D&D standard, I consider all of my encounters are considered deadly. And but I always make sure my players have enough resources that they can survive if they're smart.
Yeah, I used to try and come up with having a strategy in mind for how the
Mm-hmm.
players would get through whatever I throw at them. I always struggled with that.
Yeah.
In the years since, as I find my planning gets more and more minimalistic. At this point, I don't even have an idea of how the players are supposed to get out of it. I just know they'll come up with something.
Oh, that's I firmly believe that it is not my job as the GM or DM
Hmm.
to come up with a solution to your problem that you put your characters in. I create the problem. It's your job as the player to solve it. Um, because if you like certain game books, it doesn't say in the Dungeon Master's Guide in Dungeons and Dragons that I, as the DM, have to solve the problems that I put you guys in.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, when I had started out, I was concerned about, putting my players in an unwinnable situation.
Like a Kobayashi Maru.
Yes. Yes, that is a great example. But they always found a way out, so I stopped worrying as the years went on.
Oh my! It, I kind of feel for anybody I GM now for because like everybody like if you like the one thing that the DM's guides or game master guides for various systems say is like balance encounters, balance encounters. Why? There's no such thing like in combat, life or death matters. There is no such thing as a balanced fight. No two kingdoms
Hmm.
ever met on the battlefield and go, "Oh, we have like 10 more archers than you. We'll wait until you go get 10 more archers."
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
I don't
Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
I
Astro.
don't think that's what they mean by balanced encounters,
Oh no,
though.
it is. It's literally written. It's real. It's literally.
Okay, so that's not what they should mean by
Yeah,
balanced.
no. They
I
want you
agree with
to.
balanced encounters, but I think it should be taken in the sense of don't have every encounter be deadly. Don't have every encounter be like, and by deadly I mean like they're barely managing to get out of it alive.
All right.
You have to have some. You ought to have some that are maybe a little bit on the easier side as palate cleanse for those difficult fights, or and vice versa.
I see what you're saying, but here's my argument to that. Right? Say for instance, Astral, you and Voyeur characters are going through a forest, right? I'm your GM, and you come across some bandits. Realistically, let's think about this. Would you, as a would traveling on the road with your loot and tail, and you just came out of the dungeon? They know you came out of the dungeon because they purposefully set up the ambush for just in case somebody succeeded that very dangerous dungeon, right? Do you think which in the monster manuals, bandits are considered, depending on how many you put, are a easy encounter, right? If I add 6 or 7 bandits, which turns it from an easy encounter to a deadly encounter, would that make more sense? Because their whole objective as bandits is to leave with your loot. But
It's
if you
okay.
but if you succeed in staving off the bandits, and not every encounter, and this is another thing that was why the whole thing about villains was a great topic choice. Not every villain is going to stand and fight. Like if you
Mhm.
kill 3 of their men, and they only had 6 men, and you killed 3 of their men, why would the other 3 still stand and try to continue? Why aren't they
Oh,
not running away?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Not everything has to be a
Yeah.
fight to the death.
Right. See, that's where I think where the game masters and hopefully anybody who's listening will take this. Not everything you throw at your players is trying to fight to the death all the time. It is okay for your creatures to run away. In fact, I highly encourage make your creatures run away unless they can't because of a damn web spell.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In fact,
Fair.
I think there was something in the older editions of Dungeons and Dragons where they explicitly said, if the encounter runs away and escapes, that still counts as defeating it as
Yeah.
far as experience goes.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's the way I look at it, it's not the kills that get you your experience. It's surviving the encounter gets you your experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's my philosophy on it. But then there's milestone experience where like that's where instead of you getting experience for like killing creatures, it's every time you hit a milestone beat in your campaign, that's when your players gain a level.
Yeah. Well, that's why
Hmm.
that sort of thing is why in the systems I usually run, there is not XP awarded for fights for like killing individual monsters. Exalted doesn't have that. Hales doesn't. If anything, the way we've been handling XP for counters, okay, did the players clear the counters that I wanted to clear? Yes, they get the XP at the session because the XP is handled very differently. Often tried to traditional JRP to a written TTRP, for example, where you get that on small incremental amount of XP versus just block of it at the end of the session based on achievements. That's why I call it achievement. It's not even encounters cleared. It's what did you all achieve? Because some of those problems are social. Some of those are down to corrupt government area. You found the thing you were looking for that was hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Is in and of itself worthwhile expense.
Well, so the way I award experience in the games that I run as the game master is actually a mixture of both regular experience and milestone with a third um, um, failure. Because in real life you learn by failing. So what I do is I keep tabs of the player's experience, and then I'll let them know when they reach experience points enough where they level up, to gain new experiences. So anytime let's say anytime a player rolls a critical failure, they gain experience. Anytime they fail a check, they gain experience. Um, uh, if they trip a trap, they gain experience. Like the last game I ran, I had the two players in a interdimensional mansion where they were being attacked by inanimate object. I'm sorry, animated objects. And every time they failed to notice said animated objects, I gave them extra experience. There was an incident with a mimic chair that one of the players almost sat in. So
very nice, very nice.
But yeah, uh, but there was also a puzzle and things like that, which that session I have to say was probably one of my favorite sessions because it wasn't just a bunch of combat. It was some puzzle solving and a little bit of a mystery happening, and the players handled it pretty well. The but they did fail quite a bit, and they gained a lot of experience. And coming out of that mansion, I believe they did level up coming out of that mansion because of the amount of successes and failures.
Okay.
Well, it does. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it does make sense, in that we learn as much from our failures as our successes in real life. I was going to note that I do something kind of like that when I run a game, in that yeah, if there's any sort of experience to be awarded for someone having a good idea,
Mhm.
I will make sure, if it was a good idea, even if the role went badly, that they still get that experience for it being a good idea. And the reason I do this is, yeah, I mean, for one thing, they had a good idea. It was just sheer dumb luck whether or not it they were able to pull it off. The other reason for it is I had been in a game with a GM who was somewhat railroady,
Oh, my favorite
where
type of.
yes, where there were a few times that I had a good idea for something. She wasn't going to say that it was impossible, but no matter what I rolled, it wasn't enough because it clearly would have disrupted her plans too much.
Right.
And at the end of those sessions, I did not get good idea. I did not get good idea XP because the idea didn't work. Never mind that, um, she was that she was saying the difficulty for the role at just above whatever I got, no
So
matter what it was.
so that draws
Yeah.
a question for me is like, how do you guys feel about telling the difficulty of certain skill checks to your players?
Before we launch into that, I wanted to say one thing about the what we've been talking about.
Oh, the actual topic.
And well, no, not the BBEG, but like
It's all
your
relative.
whole like milestones thing.
Oh yeah.
Um, I think part of it also the reason why I handle things the way I do is because the systems I run don't do level ups. There is no such thing as character level.
Right,
Instead,
level-less systems.
you're raising individual skills and abilities, and I will take into account somebody says I want to use this particular combat ability. Okay, have you been in a lot of fights lately? Have you been using it a lot? Whether you succeeded at those or not, yes, I'll allow it, but it makes sense. You want to raise this thing that you've not done anything with? I'm I'm less likely to agree on one. There has to be a good reason for why your character would be able to do that. would be able to have things to draw off. And I think that's a big part of it. It's kind of baked
Well, I think
to the
that's
system.
I think that's where like level systems help alleviate that, because level systems come with prerequisites and things like that. And like I like levels because there's more structure. Even though I like chaos like in the game and stuff like that. I'm a chaotic person. But I like structure all the same. I love levels. I hate classes. I I want to be able to create a character that fits my idea of the character. And sometimes classes don't fit all the boxes that I need.
So, yeah. So to put it in terms of a video game, you prefer character creation and advancement to be similar to Fallout.
Oh yeah. Fallout or Skyrim. Yeah.
Right, Skyrim
Okay.
does that too.
Yeah, you can create the character, go out into the world, have levels, but you're creating the character you want because it's now like you're adding perks or feats or skills that make the character unique to you.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if let's say the three of us are all in the same D&D campaign and we all decide we're going to be dwarf fighters, yes, we can have different weapons and certain like feats and everything, but ultimately we if we all chose the same stuff, we would still be the exact same character.
Yeah, it's more of a conscious effort to differentiate yourself
Yeah.
in that situation.
Yeah, like you actively
Sure,
have to
yeah.
you have to go out and pick different subclasses, and then you have to bring subclasses into it, and then there's you don't have to pick feats in D&D. It's the feats are optional, but if you go with a classless thing where you build your character through feats or perks, then it's like, I have to, oh, I want to be an archer, but I want to be a sniper type of archer where I'm using a longbow from way far back in out of range, where it's going to take the bad guys like 3 rounds to get to me, but I'm still doing damage while everybody up front, meat cannon.
Yeah. And backing away while you're doing it so
Yeah,
that it takes them longer.
yeah. Every time you shoot, I take my 5 steps.
Just make sure you don't walk off a cliff.
Yeah, are you kiting in a tactical board game? Yes, I am.
Gee, using tactics? Madness. Why would you do that?
But yeah, now
It,
it's classes. I hate classes, but I love classes at the same time because I can break classes. um, but it's like I have less drive to want to break a character if I'm not trying to fill holes that a class has.
I like the idea of archetypes better.
yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, but archetypes
Yeah,
fall into the
it's
same category as classes.
Like archetypes in the sense of, okay, what do you want to like principally do? You want to be fish strong in melee. These are the things that you're good at to be strong in melee. Not like you want to be healer type.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things for the system that you need that ought high for you to be a good healer. It's just that's all there is to the archetype. Everything else you decide to invest in is up to you.
right where it's like a broad guideline.
Yeah, exactly. They're broad. Exactly what Voyer said. They're broad guidelines, and you don't have to follow the archetype. It's a way to an easy way to get a base to building from, and then you can just want get like really
Okay, I could see what you mean then, but
Yeah.
it falls into, but like, and as much as it's going to pain me to say this, there are a lot of uh there are a lot of people or groups who will mistaken, or they use class and archetype in the same, as the same thing. It's like interchangeable for them. So it's like more like a blueprint, or what do they call it in certain video games? A preset.
Yeah, that sounds
yeah,
right.
yeah. More like a blueprint or a
Yeah, or a starting point.
guidelines. They're guidelines.
Yeah. The
Example classes.
yeah.
Or example
The
loadouts.
yeah, the first edition of Dark Heresy tried to go somewhere in between having classes and being a levelless system. Apparently, the second edition it was more freeform, but I don't have that, so I don't really know. But with
Can
that
you
one,
do
it's that you
class and levelless? That sounds
well
like chaos.
the way they did it was you pick a class, and it does have a level to it, and your level determines, like, okay, here's what skills you can buy with experience, here's what feats you can buy with experience. After you've spent so much experience, you're now the next level, and you have these options as well.
So, oh, okay. So it's like everything
Uh,
costs a certain amount of experience.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, and after you've spent this much experience, you are now promoted. I mean, I did have to house rule it, where the rules as written were that if you increased your stats, that would also count for spending the experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed like too much of a treadmill to just get to the max level doing that, especially if you were raising a stat that had little to do with your class and was thus really expensive. Like, I forget the name of the class. I want to call it a scribe, where it was a very academic sort of character, where you know they use their brain for everything. So raising their strength would be really expensive, and it seemed silly to me that you could have basically a librarian who got promoted at work because they've been hitting the gym.
And yeah, that's fair. I think for Dark Heresy, it's better to call the different levels ranks, not levels, because it really
That
is
that does,
rank.
yeah,
It really is a rank up. I'm thinking about my character,
yeah,
and
that's fair.
is starting off from like kind of a grunt of department, that group of enforcers, going all the way up, basically Judge Dredd on steroids.
Yes. That is exactly that particular class and the way you were playing that character.
The more I hear
Yeah,
about Dark Heresy, the more I want to play it.
it's a lot of fun with the right GM. It's a lot of fun.
And tying back to BBEGs, there was a character in there that I had in mind as a recurring villain for the party.
Right.
They only encountered the character once before the game kind of fell apart. But the way, in that instance, where I made sure that this would be someone that would be reoccurring, was I made sure that they were too valuable for the players to want to kill him,
Mm-hmm.
but instead to capture and interrogate him. And because of how I had written the character was later able to escape.
Interesting.
Well, since we're back on the topic, uh, Remember, I said I had two
Yes.
villains I wanted to talk about. So after my first campaign, the first campaign ended. They saved the world because there wasn't any real danger left. They just mopped up the rest of the cult, and then uh, about 2 months later, I started a new campaign, and it was in like a modern setting. It was a vampire cult was running around terrorizing a city that was cursed in forever darkness. So Alaska. Um,
Yeah. I remember that movie. I don't remember the name of it, but I remember it.
well, it was something like, it was like 30 Days of Night or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Um,
I think it was a comic first.
I think so, but uh, I made the characters. It was the first session. Uh, they were escaping out of a burning building, and they turn to see the big bad evil standing in a window. And I was still relatively new, even though the first campaign was done and all this stuff. I'm still relatively new, learning all the rules, and I rolled for the big bad evil to make the superhero landing.
Oh yeah, like on one knee and one foot.
Yeah. Well, I rolled, and true to my nature, I rolled a nat 1. He stumbled out of the window, hit all the sides of the building, and impaled himself on the fence that I described earlier in the set, and turned and dusted himself.
See, this is why for anything particularly cinematic, I don't bother doing any rolls. I just say this is what happens.
I just want to point out,
Yes, exactly.
since then I have never rolled for my big bad evil cinematic scenes. I stopped doing it. I've successfully killed two of my my two of my villains because I rolled and tried to keep it fair.
You've learned your
I've
lesson.
learned my lesson.
Fairness is for players, not for GMs.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh,
It was a good laugh because they were like, "Was that the evil guy?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was the evil guy." And they were like, "All right, campaign's over, first session, woo!" I was like, "No, I'm just gonna re-roll somebody else. Don't worry about it."
yeah.
Turns out the big
Actually,
bad had a boss, a bigger bad.
Yeah.
bigger bad. Speaking of what happened to that first one you described, Diggy, I think I know how I would have handled the arrow being shot. I would have had a bodyguard who was like hiding somewhere, like hiding behind, duck out and deflect the arrow at the last second.
That would have worked if she wasn't on top of a tree.
Or like
Well-
a ninja type who could like leap up, or
Oh
Well,
yeah,
maybe
oh
have
yeah,
a,
like
Well,
some
she's-
random pigeon just flew past.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
she's
exactly.
a druid. She could summon a bird to take the shot for her.
yeah, exactly.
She could get the tree to like move a limb in the way.
Right. All right.
Something to serve as a aha, you thought I was defenseless.
Yeah.
No, I anticipated that move. Fool.
I'm fine with that, and I'm. How about one of you two, invent a time machine, go back.
I'll
in
get
time,
right on it.
I wish.
and and right as that scene is happening, you just stop me. Stop me right
Yeah,
there.
actually, I'm lying. I won't get right on it because you see, Diggy, I did already build a time machine. It took me 20 years to build, and it was an absolute waste. So I used the time machine to go back 20 years into the past to tell me not to bother wasting my time on it.
Very nice.
That's great.
Very nice. Bravo.
Excuse me.
But I will say, despite the advice we're giving to younger you, conversely, at the same time, you don't want to be too heavy-handed with negating what the players do because then that gets very railroady and
Oh yeah, you don't want to
Yeah.
undermine the players.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
I just I just personally wouldn't want to contribute into the, oh, here is the hapless big bad, doing their monologuing bit, themselves exposed. It's like, no, actually, they're not as exposed as I think they are.
But we never really know unless somebody actually attacks a big bad. Everybody always lets the big bad just do. Like I'm pretty sure there's
and I
like.
wouldn't.
I'm pretty
I
sure
would
there's like a
stop the players
convention.
from trying. It would be like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, you
Oh.
definitely tried, but the
Oh.
big bad is, 2 steps ahead of you and anticipating the attempt.
But are
And,
they
you know,
really? Look at every single James Bond movie. James Bond always gets caught because he does something stupid, not because the big bad figured he was there.
Well, I mean, to be fair with James Bond, he is like the world's worst spy.
Yo,
You know,
he
he
is,
he basically shows up everywhere. It's like, oh yes, I'm this big name spy. Look at me.
Right. What was the point of you going to the big bad guy's area and what's your name, sir? at the hotel. Bond. James Bond. Oh, you mean like that famous spy? Exactly.
I'm mistaken for him all the time.
It's like, no, a upper spy would be like, no, I'm Snad Hamwich. Thank you very much. Something ridiculous or something like Joe.
Yeah, actually, related to your player shooting the druid, when I was in a 7th Sea campaign, there was one point where there were some villains basically offering us a deal with the devil, sort of a thing. And my character, being the upstanding moral person that he was having none of this, and just pulled out his gun to just shoot at the thing giving the offer. Unfortunately, he was a very lousy shot and missed completely.
Oh no. Oh no.
Very nice. Very nice.
I actually had experience where I was one who took out the big bad one time where the big bad was giving a speech and my character was like at 2 hit points and everybody else was like we were like this was it. Like we were about to get TPK'd. And the big bad was standing in front of the pit and I was like, I want to tackle into the pit. And my DM was like, you want to do what? I was like, I want to charge and tackle him into the pit. I want to sacrifice myself. And he was like, go right ahead, roll it. And I rolled a nat 20. And he was like, hey man, you just saved the party. I was like, yes. And I was like, wait. My character died too. And I was like, all right, cool. That's the way to go. That was the way to go.
Yeah.
And I was grateful because he didn't have to let me do it, but
and you know what? It big climactic scene like that is the perfect time if you're gonna have a player death to have it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, God, with the talk earlier of encounters and the deadliness of it. Back when I ran that Demon the Fallen game, there was actually a good example of when you probably shouldn't let players die, which was we were doing like this quick side story thing of just tying up some loose ends before getting to the actual story of the campaign. Where they were where the players are tracking down one of the bad guys' minions and cornered him. And I rolled ridiculously well with his desperate, all or nothing Hail Mary attack, which would have killed them, but it seemed inappropriate for the players to die again for like this quick side story thing before getting to the actual campaign itself. So instead, they were just very badly wounded, almost dead. And then later in the campaign, during the actual campaign itself, one of the players did die, or player characters, I should say.
Right.
But with that particular game line, death is not necessarily the end. So that player character was able to come back, and in the meantime, I think his character was killed, but because he's a demon, possessing a host, he found something else to possess, which happened to be a TV.
What?
So he was doing some great role
What?
playing. He was doing some great role playing, possessing a TV until they could restore his body, so he could just transfer himself back into that.
That's actually
Yeah.
that sounds so cool. That sounds cool. One of my
it was pretty awesome.
one of my first experiences. I don't. I if I remember, I think I told you guys how my very first character was a cleric in a Hell campaign. If you know anything about D&D, there are NPCs called Baylors.
Mm-hmm.
They're practically like mini bosses, and I ran out of spells and spell slots and all that stuff. All I had was my mace and some caltrops. I threw the caltrops in the Baylor's eyes and blinded him because I because
I picked the
rolled-
wrong time to take a sip of water.
Yeah. I was like, I want to throw these caltrops. Can I do that? And my DM was cool enough. He was like, yeah, go ahead. And I was like, I want to throw them in his eyes. And he was like, if you roll high enough, you can blind him. I rolled a 19. And I think that was like my very first like real high roll of that game.
Oh,
And I was like, hey, he was like, yeah, man, you blinded the Baylor. So we had, it was probably one of the coolest things I ever did. If it wasn't for my first roll in that game being a nat 1 that got me hooked, it was me blinding a Baylor with caltrops.
oh,
I
it
think-
was. Oh, go ahead, Astral.
I was gonna say I think that's a good opportunity to dip back over to how do we feel about dealing difficulty roles into like player,
Right.
because that kind of is a perfect again. But if there's one more story you want to tell, lawyer, by all means.
I was just, similar to that. There's another friend of ours who, when I really got into role playing, had mentioned to me. I forget what it was. There was this one artifact in D&D. This is going back to 3rd edition, where it was basically like a water gun.
Oh,
And he was just saying that if you can get, if you can get the GM to agree that, with the water gun, that you can change the temperature of the water you shoot, you could just shoot boiling water with it, and there you go. You've got a great ranged weapon that's not going to run out of ammo.
It's
This is
clever,
also the
yeah.
person who taught me the importance of potions of glibness, which
Okay.
in D&D is basically you drink this potion, you get such a huge bonus on rolls to lie that no one's going to question you. And I'd go further with that, but this tangent has lasted long enough.
I was I have a few broken spells, but that can also be another topic for another podcast.
I think so, yeah.
Oh man, there's so many. Just an exalted by itself.
Because that's true. Exalted, let's face it.
But
You have broken spells.
oh yeah.
I have no, I didn't take that hit. I was never in the combat to begin with. I'm still drinking back at the bar.
That
and
that
it
is
sticks.
yeah, that is
Because yes, because fate ninjas.
such bull. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, oh
But
yeah,
yeah,
so
as far as like um making clear to players difficulty roles and the like, I tend not, because I'm of the opinion it's much more interesting, keeps them much more kind of on the edge of their seat, wondering
hmm,
if they don't know, and then I reveal once everybody has their role done. Okay, you got, for example, an awareness roll. You see this. The person who got failed might not see anything. The only instance of they know something is coming on up is if they botch, if they rolled a nat one, then it's like, well, but that's they know what's happening. They know something real wonky is real bad is going to come from the botch, because you don't expect anything good from a botch usually.
right.
Yeah, that's
Ah,
kind of that's how I use brain.
okay. Um, what about you, Voyer?
um, I usually keep it to myself, but if they ask, I will give them like a range of, somewhere around here is probably what you need, but that's only if they ask.
Oh, okay. I am actually the very opposite of you guys. Well, actually, no. It depends on the situation. Only because I I do a thing called the Box of Doom, which I borrowed from Dimension 20. The Box of Doom, I let the difficulty be known, and I have the players or myself roll a die to see if I meet or beat that difficulty rating. And normally it's for like really important roles or like scene altering roles or that can turn the tides of a battle.
Okay,
And you would not believe how it gets people on the edge of their seats.
I'll
If
believe
it's
it.
done right.
I'll believe. Yeah. There's another good, like, really good or something to rolls,
Mhm.
and that's it lets you fudge them. If they try to do something cool, you want to have it actually succeed. If they don't already know what the difficulty is, you can be like, nah, let's knock that down so that they can succeed. Or let's notch it up if it would be too much of a problem. And then they're none the wiser. So I don't tend to reveal a
Right,
lot of what's
fudging the
going
numbers
on.
as needed.
Yeah, I don't tend to reveal a lot of what's going on behind the screen, the shield or the screen. And
Mm,
that's specifically because it lets me fudge things, lets me fudge enemy, like, or how powerful and I'm finding an encounter's too dangerous.
right.
I can suddenly have that take away a couple hit points or reduce the damage amount of damage dice it's capable of rolling. It just gives me more leeway, especially since I'm coming up with most of it on the fly anyway.
I I'm actually very notorious for not fudging. In fact, I openly roll in front of the players, uh, only because um, I like giving off the will will the dice screw me or not, like
Mm,
um because I don't look at myself as just like the game master and whatnot. Like I consider myself a player also. I just have to follow more rules. and so I roll in front of my players, and like if I fudge anything, it's probably maybe once or twice, but any other time I'm rolling in front of like the players, unless it's like a sneak check or an insight check against the player.
Yeah, and I try not to fudge things too frequently, because if you're fudging things, then what's the point of setting it in place?
Mm-hmm.
But if I feel the situation calls for it, then I'll fudge it just a little bit. It's never a big fudge, to be fair. It's usually notch up. So, for example, the system I run the most frequently, the one I'm developing, difficulty rolls on a scale of 1 to 7. And I've got basic description,
Mm-hmm.
kind of what would constitute what an example of a 7. So I'll notch it down from like 5 to a 4, or from 3 to a 4, or a 5 to 6, depending on kind of the mood and the set. But
Okay.
if it's like something that won't change that, or it's not quite as important, yeah, let the dice decide, and whatever they say goes. Generally,
Okay. What about you, Voyeur? What do you think about fudging?
I've done it a few times. It's although usually before I get to that point, um, it's usually a matter of if a player is doing something that I know isn't going to work, that's going to backfire badly. Especially looking at what I've rolled,
Mm-hmm.
I'll usually ask them, "Do you really want to be doing this?"
Oh, those are my favorite words.
oh, I love
Mine
those
is,
words.
"Are you sure?"
Yes, yes, I use "Are you sure?" Are you sure about that?
Or, or my favorite, "If you really want to do this, roll for it."
Oh, that's another good one.
uh,
Yes.
because I'm a
All
firm
phrases you
believer.
don't want to hear from your storyteller.
Exactly. Especially if because I have the yes and mindset.
Yes.
hmm
But
Which you really is it really does you a lot of favors if you're GMing.
yeah,
Oh,
it,
totally.
it alleviates a lot of stress. But it's like you really want to tightrope across the cavern while holding 2 chests of gold with the 100
Yep.
mile an hour winds. You really want to do this? Okay, roll for it.
That I love that. Yes, yes, yeah. That's a good example of that sort of.
But
But actually, we are on our 1 hour mark, so that means.
oh, I didn't even get to go on about that other BBEG.
Yeah, you're the other BBEG.
There's
Can we go a
always.
touch longer so that story can happen? Because I think I know which one it is.
Oh,
I'm
well, yeah, yeah.
good.
We
Okay,
can
well
close it out
this
with your story, Warrior.
okay. So this was again in that Exalted campaign where once again it was someone else that was actually GMing that story, but because my character was unavailable for in story reasons, um, the GM for that particular one was like, okay, can you make a villain? Can you make a villain for this? Here's what I have in mind. Go flesh it out. Have fun. I kind of went overboard with that, creating a well, in Exalted, the fair folk are basically sentient abstract ideas from outside of reality.
Freaking or your lush.
And oh man, Diggy, you're annoyed with the bullshit with Astral's character just retconning himself out of a bad situation.
Oh yeah.
With this character, one of the powers they can have is this doing this particular dice roll rather.
Mm-hmm.
You can opt, instead of rolling, you just automatically succeed.
I'm sorry. Come again?
With a couple of specific dice rolls, you can opt, using this particular power for those kinds of characters, to just automatically succeed. At like the barest minimum of success.
Oh my lord.
And so having this character running around antagonizing the party, but remaining elusive. I picked this up for having him basically stealthing around. And the way that power is written, it's, if there's a roll off with someone else, if that other person is not describing what they're doing, like, using that system, making a stunt out of it where they make it interesting enough that they get bonus dice. Um, because the fair folk operate on the power of narrative bullshit, if the other person is not making a stunt out of it, you automatically succeed with that specific sort of dice roll. The players had no idea of this.
That just sounds like a level of bullshit that I just would not stand.
Oh yes. And I had great fun antagonizing the hell out of everyone, because it was another GM that was actually running the session, or the story rather, and me just handling the BBEG. That freed up a lot of, for lack of a better word, mental resources for how that villain is responding to what the players are doing at any given moment in time, because that's all I'm worrying about. The GM is handling all the other stuff. And this was not a character that survived the end of the story.
Yeah.
But the players earned it.
I don't know. That draws a question. I would love to see what those characters can get up to in the abyssal plane. Especially your character and mine. If they decided to go on a crusade down there.
Oh, that would be interesting. But just again, with that BBEG, with all that he was stealthing around, if the players had come up with anything more concrete than just, well, I'm searching for him, then it would have been a stunt, and then it would have been an actual roll-off, as opposed to, oh, you're just doing a roll for this? You automatically fail, because he automatically succeeds.
That's horrible.
most of us never touched that particular book describing those particular beings. We had no clue that was possible.
Oh man.
But that was another one. I initially made that character even tougher, and the person who was GMing that story was like, "No, that's ridiculous. Tone it down." Once they finally cornered him and actually got a fight going, he went down pretty fast.
I mean, when one of the fighters is capable of basically spawning multiple copies of themselves and hitting said BBG from 4 different directions once, at full power, yeah, they don't last long.
Yeah. Well,
They really don't last long.
it's exalted. Everyone has bullshit powers, and that's how it balances itself out.
I mean, my character is literally a walking nuclear bomb.
Yeah, basically. Basically.
Oh, right, you did pick up that power.
Oh, and several others that just enhances it.
But anyway, that's the last BBEG I had in mind for today.
All right. Well, you have successfully made me hate stealth rolls.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes, yes. Good.
and
Good.
and
Good.
and I'm my personal belief that perception is always and forever will be a dumb stat.
You gotta get out of that one because that one keeps getting you in trouble.
It draws the story and make things interesting. What do you mean? There's an army of kobolds in front of me. I don't see anything.
What cobalt?
But we will call this one a session.
All right.
And,
Sounds good.
we will reconvene and pick up another topic, which we have to. Well, I will have to remember. And not forget it. I promise you, I'll write it down. And then,
Well, you wrote down this one too.
I don't know if that's gonna help.
It didn't help at all. I'm gonna have to put it somewhere. I'm gonna have to remember. So, all right. Once again, this is Game Master Circle. I'm Diggy.
I'm Voyeur.
And I'm Astral.
Thank you for listening, and see you all again soon.